Welcome to More Than a Budget, a podcast presented by Relational Media. Co-founders Jeff Fine-Thomas, a licensed marriage and family therapist, and John Mitchell, a certified financial planner, combine the fields of psychology and personal finance to help couples improve their relationships and discover what is more important than money.
Jeff, what are we talking about today?
Today, we're talking about arguments.
You know, we spend a lot of time talking about the things that lead up to arguments, how to, unpack financial ideas to avoid and lessen arguments. And we kind of circle around this fact that people do have arguments about money and lots of other things. But we've never really stepped into the ring with our listeners to say what's going on in the middle of an argument.
I like your fighting analogy there. I know that was completely intentional.
So today we are going to literally step through the ropes into the ring with you and kind of talk about some of the mechanics that are going on in the middle of an argument and maybe provide a slightly different model to think about how to argue.
Yeah, John said something to me the other day, a couple of weeks ago, in a conversation we had. I think it was actually about the podcast, where apparently I had said something different than usual and he wasn't paying attention. And I said something like, the purpose of an argument is to create repair.
At which I went, excuse me, what?
Yeah, and that, for me, that was weird because, of course, I think about the purpose of arguments as creating repair because that's what I do all day long, right? Like I talk with couples or people about how things are going wrong in their relationships. And
I'm thinking more like, my own personal experience, which
of course.
is most arguments are not about repair. Do you want the list of what I think arguments are about?
Yeah, tell me. I'm curious. It's going to be a good list.
Well, obviously to be right, to win, to get an apology if I think I've been wronged, to score points, to gain power. None of these are benevolent. I want to make sure that that I do that that I know that none of these are the best motivations.
Right.
But arguments are kind of like getting bit by a dog. You don't. It isn't a thoughtful moment. It's a reactionary thing, right?
Yeah.
And so for you to actually have the audacity to propose that arguments could actually be thoughtful was a little bit startling.
Yeah, and I'll say it again, just to reiterate here. For me, the purpose of an argument is to create repair in the relationship, to create a higher level of closeness or connection. And I think the fact that that idea sounds foreign is to a lot of people. I don't think it's just you, and I've certainly been in that boat too. So it's not like I haven't also had my own ill motives during an argument. But the fact that it sounds foreign, it just indicates that we're so committed to being right or gaining power or winning or whatever the sort of difficult motivation is right there. So I want to unpack what an argument. We're going to go fast. We're going to try and go fast because there's a lot. Actually, you could do a ton of reading. I'm sure there's somebody and lots of somebody's who's written books just on how to have a proper argument, right? Like how to make it work for you in a relationship. We're not going to do all that. We're going to try and move through this pretty quickly. So, one of the things I want us to pay attention to is that one of the big problems in an argument is that people get to a spot in the argument where they reach a kind of metaphoric threshold. After they pass that threshold, the intensity of their feelings just becomes...
It's a spike.
Horrible. Yes. They get, some situation has occurred in the relationship and one person has become so defensive or irritated that they, have to sort of impulsively rather than thoughtfully state their opinion, state the contrary opinion or whatever. And then you can almost see that argument escalating step by step until at some point one person has such intense feelings that they can no longer be productive in that conversation.
I think of that Disney kids movie with the character that, all the emotions live inside of this control center.
Yeah.
And there's that one that's anger, and he's always grumpy, but every once in a while, boom, the flames come out of his head,
right.
And he goes to 11. And I think we've all experienced that. So, how do you maintain your objectives? First of all, what should our objectives be? But how can you maintain objectives, when, boom, you find almost like the dog bite, you just weren't expecting it, and bang, here I am.
Yeah, one way to think about feelings, one vantage point to think about feelings from is to imagine that they serve as a cue or a signal to tell you something important. They're grabbing your attention about something and saying, "Hey, pay attention to this important thing," whether that's, joy or excitement or anger or frustration or hurt or whatever. Doesn't matter what the feeling is. So one of the things that we need to do is just pay attention to the feelings we have, and especially the intensity of those feelings, and then figure out what we're going to do with that. Because to your previous point, like, what should our goal be in a argument? The goal should be to repair, right? To figure out how to make the relationship better. And I do want to say, a lot of arguments are patterned. In other words, this is probably not the first time you've argued about that subject. And many arguments are not going to be fully resolvable. I don't want that to be discouraging. That's just a reality. Sometimes people in a couple have different styles, and they have different needs and different motivations. Sometimes what that looks like is that they don't know how to solve the differences in their style or their personality or whatever. And so you have to find these workarounds. That's what I'm talking about. Like, can we figure out a way to get our minds to a spot where we're not, wanting to kill the other person long enough to have some actual problem solving going on and compromise and figure out how we're going to make the relationship closer, rather than letting our wish to have more power or to win or to, whatever, overcome the relationship and cause some destruction. So first thing, I'm sort of advocating is figure out your threshold. It's going to be variable for you at different times. If you're having a bad day, your threshold is going to be lower. If you're having a good day, you might have more patience. But whatever your threshold is, figure out what that is, pay attention to it, and do everything in your power to try to not go past that threshold. So what does that look like? There are all kinds of different things that people do to solve that dilemma. I mean, one of them is just to take a break. Like, if you're in the middle of an argument and you feel as if you're about to lose your mind, or, it's, hey, I know this is important. I know you need to say what you need to say, and I want to be able to hear it, but I've reached that limit where I feel like I might say things that would not be helpful for our relationship. So can we take a 10-minute break? And then I promise I'll come back and we can jump back in. Just having a little bit of space for some people, not all people, but some people, really makes a big difference. They can kind of calm down for a minute, remember that they love their partner, and then jump back in and try and get some problem solving. The next one I would think helps some people is to work on figuring out how to create calm in yourself. If you're noticing those intense feelings come up and you have a go-to way for yourself of trying to, create a little bit of calm in intense moments, then do it. Even just saying out loud, hey, I'm wondering if we could reduce our intensity right now so that we could, maybe get to some repair here. You have to know your partner, and you have to use the language that works in your relationship. So I'm not saying there's like a, template way to do this, but you get the idea.
So if I can interrupt here for a second, it seems like both parties have to kind of agree to these terms.
Yeah.
Hey, we need to try to argue differently. Yeah. Because I could see if somebody was trying to win an argument
Right.
and the other party got emotional or got flared up,
Right.
and wanted to back up and take a break, I could see one of them going, kind of maybe not cognitively, but saying, I'm on the verge of winning this thing. We're not stopping. We're doing this right now.
Oh, for sure.
You've never seen this in therapy, have you?
Right, never. Right. No, obviously, people have different styles of arguing too. Some people are more verbal and some people are very physically expressive. So they, wave their hands around or they pace or whatever. And some people are withdrawn or quiet, or they appear to be like steaming, you know what I mean? So there are different styles, more than I've just mentioned here. And obviously, people have different ways of thinking about how to end an argument. So you're right. I do think there needs to be a conversation in the relationship, like what's our goal? Is our goal in arguments to try to win, or do we want to actually build our relationship into something that's meaningful?
Right.
And that can be sustainable over time.
I think just the general idea that you painted early as we were having this initial discussion was that arguments come out of friction, right?
Sure.
And the best thing in the world would be for us to figure out why you do what you do and why I do what I do.
Right.
And us find a compromised, negotiated way of moving forward where that thing is observed, discussed, organized, and resolved as much as it is possible. For
right.
good-willed people to do.
Sure.
And so that's, I mean, I hate to say it again, but that was kind of earth-shattering to realize that, hey, I'm in this argument because a thing happened. And, what if the whole point of this was to not have this argument 8 more times?
Or if the issue keeps coming up, to notice that the issue has come up and you've already figured out the workarounds that can make your relationship work better. Then you're avoiding all of that miserable time trying to, punch each other in the nose. Nobody loves that. So, yeah, I think there are going to be things that you just can't resolve and things that you can resolve. But either way, you want to be in a situation where that's happening, such you both feel respected and cared about, and that you're both working on the same team towards the same goal. Typically arguments are felt like, I have my position and I am going to use my bulldozer to run you over. It's a your partner is an opponent, not a partner.
Right.
So yeah, I'm definitely advocating for having a conversation about how can we create a partnership, a team, even when we disagree. Yeah.
So what's this going to look like?
So, I think one of the things you're going to need to figure out how to do for yourself is figure out, your own motivation in an argument, but also how to let go of things like needing to be right. So maybe there's a long-standing or longer issue there where you need to talk it out with your partner or your friends or mentors or whoever can listen to you about this. But if you have a strong need to be in power or strong need to be right or to get your own way or whatever, that needs to be worked out, because you can't be on a team and diminish your partner. So, be able to figure out what your feelings are, be able to state them. Lots of people can't state their own feelings. That's okay. But go online and search for, a feeling wheel or a feeling list or emoji list or whatever, and figure out what your feelings are and be able to state them clearly and understand why they're there and what they mean. So, I think your job in an argument is to be loving, right? When your partner says something in an argument, it's very important that you demonstrate that you can understand what's going on for them. If we're having an argument about a subject let's say money or whatever, and I say, yes, we should buy a car, and my partner says, no, we should not buy a car, we could spend all day long trying to battle back and forth about who's right or wrong on that. But if we switch gears and we say, I'm going to listen to my partner now, and I'm going to try to tell them what I think they're saying, what I think they're feeling, and what I think it means, until they realize I got what they're saying. I understood it. Then we have this opportunity, right? Like if we can go both directions like that, where both people understand what's going on in the mind of the other, then we have opportunity for problem solving. As long as we're not understanding the other person, you've had this experience, like your partner says something, and before they finish saying it, you've already generated the response in your head.
I've never done that in my life.
I'm sure. We're going to call your wife and confirm that
Don't
later.
do that.
A little
Nope.
fact checking here. I think we've all had that. And to the extent that you're doing that in your mind, you're closing off understanding your partner's experience. You don't have to agree with your partner. You can still hold on to your own position, but you have to be able to demonstrate to your partner that you understand their position and how they feel about it and what it means to them. In other words, you have to value their opinion, like as much as you value your own. Once they understand that, and if this is mutual, it goes both in both directions, then there's opportunity for really problem solving. But as long as your partner believes you don't understand and you don't care about their feeling, what's going to happen? They're just going to get louder and louder and louder, or they're going to withdraw, or they're going to become more defensive or more critical. They're going to become more escalated because they want you to hear that what they have to say is important. So I think, the bottom line here is, in order for us to get to a spot where we could actually make repair, where we could compromise, where we could come to an understanding together that's real problem solving or real workarounds, we have to have empathy for our partner's experience. We have to value them as human beings as much as we value our own position. And we have to imagine in our own minds, this person is someone I love. I'm doing all of this so we can work together to create something better.
We talk about all these things in our other podcasts about how you need to be, expressing empathy for where your partner comes from. And we kind of have talked about all of these things, kind of like assuming that there's been an argument, and now afterwards, here's some things that you can do. Or we've had these arguments a whole bunch of times, so here's some things that we need to think about or play with in order to prevent these arguments. So I think this is really novel, to where you're saying, hey, even the way we're going to argue, whether it be about financial issues or other ones, is going to be based on these new rules of engagement, because we choose to not just be wild animals that go at each other. We choose to be partners. We choose to understand. We choose to show respect. And we're going to choose to work together to find a common ground. Not just my page, not just your page, but
our page.
Page.
That's right.
So all of these things can happen outside of an argument, but they are still valid in the fact of, or in the ring of the argument itself.
If you don't understand the basic process or rules of thumb, rules of engagement for an argument, it doesn't matter what the subject is you're arguing about, it's going to go wrong. You have to have a basic understanding of what the rules of engagement, the rules of connection are, that allows you to take the most challenging of subjects and work through it without being hateful.
It reminds me of another crazy thing you said, and that was this idea that good couples argue.
Yeah.
And I kind of struggled with that too, but this thought that you're presenting, which is intentionally arguing for the sake of repair. Not intentionally arguing, but if you are in an argument, let's be intentional about the fact that the point of this is to get to a point of healing and repair. But the idea that all couples are going to argue is just a recognition that all couples are going to have moments of friction because they're different people.
Yeah.
You know, I think all of us have tried to say, well, we would be happier if we argued less, so let's avoid arguments.
Yeah.
And you're not saying that.
I'm not saying that. You know, there are couples in the world who avoid conflict altogether, and they will tell you they never have conflict. And what they mean is they never say what they're upset about.
Mm-hmm.
And for those folks, I tend to want them to say what they're upset about and work it out rather than holding it, because the risk of doing it that way is that you hold resentments, right? Like you hold on to the things that went wrong that you never talked about. All couples have friction, all of them. Mm-hmm. And even the happiest ones, the ones that have happy marriages for 40, 50 years, they have frictions. They're not, you know, just like any relationship, they're not expecting not to have friction. They know that's going to occur. They just figured out how to do it together. No matter what the subject is, they figured out how to be loving and respectful and kind, and to not jump to conclusions and, you know, not let it get too escalated.
So maybe this would be a good episode if you listen to these by yourself. This would be a good one to have your partner listen to.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be a good idea to pick something that you've had some friction about and say, hey, this is some low-hanging fruit. This isn't something that we've gotten really hot about. It's not going to set the world on fire if we bring it back up again.
Right.
But maybe we could practice on this entry-level, intermediate, or beginner-level argument.
I love the idea of practice. I think this is exactly the kind of thing you have to practice, because for most of us, it's not native, and it takes work, you know. Practice. Go online and, you know, do some research and find the books or the, you know, articles or whatever that are helpful to you about how to implement this sort of thing, and study up. You know, you're investing in your relationship. It's perhaps the most important relationship that you'll have in your life. And it's really, really important to invest the time and energy to make sure you're taking care of it at its most vulnerable moments.
You know, we watched our parents at some level do marriage. They were not experts.
Yeah.
And our in-laws, we've watched them do marriage at some level, and they are also not experts.
Right.
They can be helpful. It's good to get advice from people, especially successful people. But there are not a lot of marriage experts in the field of people who are married.
Yeah.
So this is something that it's helpful to get some outside information.
For sure.
And to do a little bit of study up and put some work into it. Jeff,
Yeah.
I really appreciate your thoughts on this.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad to do it.
It's a novel idea, and it's something that I want to work on. And I hope our listeners will play with it too.
Yeah, we work on this, all of us, for all of our life. That's part of the deal. So, yeah.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us a like, comment, or review. And tell your friends. New episodes drop weekly. Learn more about Jeff and John at relational-media.com.